Hi guys, Richard Blaine here. Thanks for stopping by my Easy Cooking channel tonight. In the last two videos, I covered how to sharpen knives, maintain knives, hone knives using a sharpening steel. Different kinds of sharpening steels. A grooved sharpening steel, a ceramic honing rod, and a diamond honing rod. And I showed you how to use them in unison to keep your knives razor sharp. Now, sharpening is a process of thinning a blade. And the thinner the blade, the sharper the knife. One of the final steps in sharpening is polishing the edge or stropping the edge. And that's what I'm going to cover tonight. As I said, sharpening is a process of thinning the blade. And each consecutive bevel that you use is another step in micro beveling a blade. So when you start at 600, 1000, 2000, 3000, 4000, each consecutive step you take, each higher number in grit is the next step in micro beveling and thinning the blade. Now many of us don't have a 10,000 or a 20,000 grit stone laying around for a micro beveling process, a final micro beveling process. But this is where stropping your knife comes in very handy, because you can polish your knife down to 20,000 grit very cheaply, and with stuff that you have laying around your house. And if you don't, you can get it at a thrift store and do an excellent job. So we're going to cover the final step in using a steel. We're going to cover knife stropping. As usual, YouTube, 15 minutes. Let's get going. See you on the other side. Okay, guys, so here we are. In the prior two videos, we sharpened this knife using a steel, a grooved steel, then a ceramic rod, and a diamond rod in conjunction. And we cut some paper, and I popped the hair off my arm, and I shaved my nail to show you how sharp it gets. And that's a great step, okay? Getting it to that kind of sharpness. These Japanese knives, very thin, aggressively sharp. And if you know what you're doing, very easy to sharpen. Now, some people go to the nth degree, and after they sharpen their knives on like a 300 grit, and then a 600 grit, 1000 grit, then they'll go to, say, a 1500 grit stone, a 2000, then a 3000, 4000, and 8000 to get a polished edge using Japanese water stones, either clay-based or ceramic-based. You can do that at home, although some of those higher grit Japanese stones can get quite expensive. And the fact of the matter is, you can strop your knife like a professional without having to invest in those kind of stones. And you can save a lot of money. Now, don't get me wrong, I happen to like the stones. And in future videos, I'm going to show you how to use Japanese water stones. I'm going to show you how to true Japanese water stones, how to maintain Japanese water stones, and how to sharpen your kitchen cutlery on it. But for all intents and purposes here, after you've done final sharpening of your knife, there's another step that you can do. And that step is called stropping. And stropping involves using a piece of leather. All right. Now, when you use a piece of leather like this, and this is a razor strop, okay, you don't have to use a razor strop. You could use an old leather belt with the inside showing up. Okay, you don't have to spend $25, $30, even $100 on a razor strop. Just get an old belt out of your closet or a thrift store. When you use a piece of naked leather like this, and you're done sharpening your knife, and you want to take a final step in stropping your knife, you can take your knife like so, raise it a little bit, and stroke it backwards on the leather. And this is okay. Now, here's a secret people tell you about stropping. When I'm stropping my knife on this piece of leather, and this leather has no compound, okay, I'm not removing any metal. Therefore, what I am accomplishing here on the strop is no different than what I accomplish on the steel. What I'm doing is realigning the edge. Leather in itself has silicate in it, so it will lend itself to giving my final edge a nice polish without using a compound. Now, using this belt without it being glued down to anything is what they call stropping in slack. And some people do it in the standing position. This leather just happens to be a very good piece of leather, and it stays down on my board and allows me to do this. But without any compound, basically all I'm doing is I am shining up the blade a little bit, but I am realigning the edge. Now, when you take this piece of leather and you charge it with a compound, either a spray compound, a paste compound, or powder compound, you're using a compound that's gauged in microns, okay? And those compounds will remove metal. So when you use a strop with a compound, instead of just realigning your edge like I'm doing here, which is very similar to steeling, except when you steel, you come toward yourself and then you move away from yourself. You come toward yourself on both sides of the rod, steeling. When you're stropping for alignment, you're moving away in reverse, unfolding an edge. That's why honing is the reverse on a strop of steeling. Steeling is this way, stropping is reverse. All right? Now, as I said, if I had this charged, and my favorite is green Veritas paste. Okay, if I had this piece of leather charged with green Veritas paste, I would be removing steel. Therefore, I would be sharpening as a final step in my sharpening process at about a grit of 20,000, finer than most Japanese waterstones that you could buy on the market. Now, if you don't have a leather strop like this, and you don't have a leather belt in the closet, you can go out and buy one in the thrift store and do the same exact thing I'm doing here. You could buy the piece of leather or the belt at a thrift store, and you can glue it down to a 2x4 just like this with some Gorilla Glue and have yourself a strop. You don't need to spend $25, $30, $40, $50 on the sharpening websites buying a leather strop when all you got to do is get an old leather belt from when you were either too fat or too skinny, or just go to a thrift store and buy a decent piece of quality leather belt, okay, and mount it to a 2x4 this way, and you're in business and you've saved $25, $30, $40, $50. Sounds good. Now, of course, if you don't want to do that, I got news for you. You could strop your knife on a piece of cardboard just like this, because what this cardboard and what that leather strop have in common is something called silicate, and silicate will polish. But I use something called a poor man's strop, and here it is. All right, it's a piece of cardboard, and this piece of cardboard is loaded with metal polish. You could use any kind of metal polish you want. Metal Glow, Flitz, Stanley. You could use anything you want. You can go to a dollar store and buy a tube of metal polish. It doesn't matter. You rub the metal polish into the cardboard and you let it dry, like this is dry. And right here you have between a 10,000 and a 20,000 grit strop. Now, you see this? This is metal that has been removed from this knife. Therefore, you're not only stropping, you're sharpening. So you take this, you put it on your board, you hold it down. You lay your knife perfectly flat as a final step, and then raise it up a bit, and then go backwards. Okay, that's all there is to it. The poor man's strop works every time. The corrugations in the cardboard, these lines, work to grip your knife's edge as you work. Light pressure. You don't need to use heavy pressure. Just hold the piece of cardboard down, follow your edge, like so. Follow your edge. Follow your edge. Okay? Stropping. Micro beveling, micro polishing that blade to a razor sharpness for pennies. For pennies. Now, I know I'm showing this to you in a series of videos talking about steeling knives using the rod, and I'm going to cover this again with you when I get into the stones, because I'm going to be doing future video tutorials on how to sharpen with Japanese water stones, how to sharpen with domestic Arkansas stones, how to use synthetic stones, synthetic ceramics, diamonds, and different ways that you could use these stones to sharpen your knife. All right. Metal removal, micro beveling. Wipe the polish. I don't have much hair left. Okay, I've polished it so well that you can't even hear the crickets like my friend Bo says over at Bo Hunter. You see? All right. He says you can hear the crickets at .43. But I've polished this edge so well, it's literally silent. Okay. I could shave with it. And once again, paper test. Okay. Okay. What would you do if you could get your knives this sharp at home? There you have it. Stropping your blade. I'll see you on the next video. I'm going to get back to cooking. See you soon. Thank you for stopping by, guys. I really appreciate it. This subject of stropping a blade, I'm presenting to you a bit early in the sharpening process. I have many, many, many more tutorials to present to you on varied subjects between sharpening and food preparation. I'm going to be going into sharpening knives with Japanese stones, and like I said, domestic stones, synthetic stones, and the different ways that you can stroke a knife on a stone to sharpen them. But next week I'm going to get back into cooking something, and I'll try to fit in tutorials with the cooking videos. I appreciate you stopping by, and I hope you enjoyed this. We'll cover stropping again in future videos as we do sharpening and other subject matter pertaining to it. I'll see you next time. I think I'm going to do summer recipes next time. We'll see. But thanks for stopping by. See you next time. Take care.